So this is a Prado towing another Prado. It's grossly overloaded. We're going to look at why it's overloaded, why that's a bad idea, and talk about how to tow cars on car trailers properly. So this caught my attention because it's clearly overloaded. The weight of that Prado plus the trailer, as we'll see in a moment, is more than that a Prado head can tow. There's an esky there, which is pretty odd. It's not tied down correctly. And as you can see here, there's a lot of tow ball pressure at the back, and that's really lifting the front up. Really dangerous. Now let's explain why all of that is a problem. So to see why this is a problem, we need to start looking at how much weight we're talking about here. I'm going to start with the towed car. That's a Prado, and the tare weight of a Prado is around about 2320. There's a bunch of modifications to it, such as a bull bar, tyres, I see some side rails on it, and of course it's got the RTT, the rooftop tent. So I think conservatively that's probably around 2,500 kilograms we've got sitting on that trailer. Then the trailer could be one of two types. It's definitely a hire trailer. One type of hire trailer they've got is a basic type. It's tare weight of 789, and the maximum it can weigh at ATM, the aggregate trailer mass, is 2,000, and that means it's got a payload of 1,210 kilograms, which is the maximum weight of the car you can put on it. So if that's the case, that's well and truly overloaded. The second type of trailer, the company does have a heavy duty version, and that weighs 1,000 kilograms, that's unladen. Maximum it can weigh is 3,500, so it's got a payload of 2,500. So if that was the case, this car may just squeak into being legal on that trailer, but again, it's pretty sure it's over 2,500. Okay, now the towed weight then is 2,500 plus at least 800 kilograms of trailer, maybe 1,000, so at least 3,300 kilograms there. The tow car itself, similar mods to the towed vehicle, but it's going to have people in it, so I reckon that's probably going to be around about the 2,600 mark, and that's excluding tow ball mass, which we will come on to in a moment because that is quite exciting. So the total weight, probably at least 5,900 kilograms, but could well be beyond the 6-ton mark. All right, now let's talk about the TBM, which is the tow ball mass, or how much nose weight is pressing down on the back of the car there. And it's significant because that is pointing skywards, and that's never a good sign, never a good look. So let's just do some rough calculations. Now this is the midpoint between the front and rear axles on the trailer in red there, and I've estimated that distance from that midpoint to the hitch point was 4.1 meters. Now I've also estimated the centre of gravity of this Prado to be about there-ish. Now, unladen, a Prado actually has a centre of gravity, it's a little bit front heavy, but once it's laden, got a lot of kit in it, that starts to move towards the back. So I'm going to be generous and put it further towards the back than it probably is. And that's probably a distance of about 1.3 metres. So roughly, if we take that car weight of 2,500 kilograms, we can do this little calculation, and that comes out to around about 790 kilograms. Now, it's not exact because suspension compression and it's only estimates, etc. But you know, it's not going to be a zillion miles off, and even if that was twice as much as I've got it there, that is a significant amount, because remember, that actually is the amount the car is pressing down, and that excludes the tow ball mass already on the trailer before the car got on it. So I think really we're probably looking at beyond 800 kilograms pressing down about there. And so that means that we've got the tow weight of 2,600 plus 850 kilograms. 3,450 kilograms is what I estimate this vehicle is being made to carry, which is a lot for a poor little Prado. This is Prado vehicular abuse of the first order. Now, the rear axle load also gets exciting. So imagine a pivot like this. We press down here, and obviously we're going to get an up force there. We've all been on seesaws. Well, the interesting thing is the force on the pivot point actually is the same as that plus that, and that's the force we've got there. Now, how does that translate to our Prado? Well, let's say we've got 850 kilograms pressing down here, and then we've got 1,200 pressing down there, and we've got 350 or so pressing up. Now again, these are rough numbers, they're just estimates here. There's a whole bunch of modelling stuff I haven't done. It's really rough basic stuff, but it does give you an idea. And we know that's true because you can see how much this vehicle has lifted there, and that's equivalent to putting a jack under it and then just going up till it gets 350 kilograms and then compressing that in the order of 1200 kilograms, and that's 1200 plus the weight of the vehicle. So again, more vehicular abuse. So let's just summarise all the things wrong with this, which is quite a few. First of all, we are definitely exceeding the maximum tow limit. I don't know if these Prados can tow 2500 or the 2018 refresh, which went to 3000. Either which way, there's definitely more than 3000 kilograms being towed. So the maximum tow limit of the Prado is being exceeded. Now, the trailer ATM, that's the maximum load of the trailer or the payload, that is almost certainly being exceeded unless it's that heavy duty trailer and that car is less than 2500, in which case it will just sneak under, but I'm pretty sure it would be over. If you are towing more than 2000 kilograms without independent brakes, that's illegal. That's why you've got to have things like electric brakes or equivalent in trailers when you're towing more than 2000, and this is above 2000. So if it's illegal either way. Now, if this was the heavy duty trailer, that comes or is hired with an elect brake system, which is independent brakes via Bluetooth. I've used it, it's pretty good, so that would solve that problem. But if it isn't, it's just plain overrun brakes, and there's no way you want to be towing that sort of weight with overrun brakes. The trailer GTM, this is the gross trailer mass, that's the weight on the axles, and I think that is well and truly exceeded as well. Same logic as before. Maximum tow ball mass exceeded epically, biblically, beyond limits and then some. Rear axle load, again, blown completely out of the water. And the GVM, that's definitely been exceeded because we've got 800-ish kilograms pressing down on here, and you know, that's the total payload of the vehicle before we consider the mods and the people and everything else in it. So that's well and truly exceeded as well. The GCM is 5,990. Again, if this is 2,500 and we're conservative here as well, then that just squeaks under, but I kind of feel my conservative estimates are being a bit generous, so probably that's exceeded as well. The one bit of green, the front axle load, because you've taken 350 odd kilograms off the front axle, we're actually good to go on the front axle load, which is rarity. Now here, I don't think it's secured properly. I'm going to come on to how to secure a car, but I'm not overly keen on what appear to be straps just at the back there on the tow hitch. Uneven weighting, and there's a lot of weight on this front axle on the tandem and not much on that, and what that means is that we're going to get a lot of grip here and not a lot of grip there. Now probably only the front wheel is brake, not the rear, so braking wise it probably doesn't affect it too much, but what that does mean is that the pivot point starts to shift a little bit forwards, and we get less stability in the trailer, and it's less able to resist sway because it will start to pivot around this axle as opposed to the center of the two, so it's basically a less stable tow. And because we've got so much weight on that front axle and load there, could well be that we've overloaded that axle as well as the tyres, and I think that's the case even if it was the heavy duty trailer as well. There's really no suspension travel left at the back. You can see that in the video, so that would be sitting on what we termed a bump stop, so that's basically just a bit of rubber because the core spring is just completely compressed. What that means is you're going to get very poor braking because the vehicle is going to bounce around. You're going to get very poor handling. It's just awful generally, and because there's so little load on the front, again, we're going to get very poor handling, braking. The car's not going to want to go around the corner. Basically, the more load or weight on a tyre, the more grip you have. So we've got lots of grip on the back, very little grip on the front, so going around a corner is going to be a problem. And when we brake, we're actually going to increase the tow ball mass here, so we're not really going to get much of a weight shift onto the front, and that's going to be even worse. And also remember that vehicles are set up to do most of the braking on the front wheels, and this doesn't have a lot of weight on it, and that has a lot of weight, so it's all kind of bad news. So here's another example from my archives. That's a Suzuki Jimny, which has a rated tow of 1300 kilograms. That trailer is probably best part of that, maybe 800, 900, 1000. adding on the car, and that's too much. And you can kind of tell, because like the Prado, that is pointing skyward, so that's a really good indication not to do this. And the police can and do catch you for this sort of stuff, and then you have to explain to them why you were doing what you were doing, not a conversation you really want to have. So let's talk about a brief guide to staying legal and safe when car trailer towing. And step one is you've got to find your car's weight. Now, a lot of cars are towed empty, and ideally you want to make it as light as possible. Let's assume that. You want to look up the unladen weight, which is sometimes known as the tear weight, the curb weight, or the Miro mass and running order. Typically, let's find it on the car maker's website or review. Make sure it's your specific car. It does change according to trim level, engine, transmission, etc., and allow for any weight of modifications as well. And the best thing to do is actually go to a weighbridge or use a mobile weigh operator. And if you go to my website, you will see a list of mobile weigh operators. They're all around Australia. They will come to you and weigh your vehicle corner weight to each kilogram and each corner, or you can go to that weighbridge. Now, I actually took my Lotus to a weighbridge, a GoWeigh, which actually does have a special recreational program for trailers and also cars, and this is what I found. So the tear weight of the vehicle, and I made a note it was full fuel, is in fact 940 kilograms. So now I know how much my car weighs exactly. Step two, you've got to find your car's centre of gravity, and this is effectively the balance point. I don't recommend you doing this with your actual car, this is just conceptually. So if you put the car on top of a pyramid, where would it balance exactly? So there's three methods. You can estimate it, you can look it up, or you can weigh it. Now the lookup is just looking at spec sheets, etc. It's typically not on manufacturer spec sheets, but for sports cars, often someone's figured it out, and then you might be able to use that value. Weighing we've already covered, and I'm going to talk about estimating. So estimating, typically a mid-engined car, which is inevitably rear-wheel drive, will have a 40-60 weight split, so the centre of gravity will be towards the rear wheels. A car which is front engine rear drive typically is around 50-50, and I will say at this point, please do not believe the marketing people that say a 50-50 weight distribution is perfect. It's not, it just happens to be equal. And then a front drive car with a front engine typically is nose heavy, so that might be around about 60-40. These are just approximates to give you a bit of a guide. So in lieu of anything else, you can work on that. You do not want to be loading a front one of these cars in the same way you load one of those. That would be a bad move. So if we want to measure the centre of gravity, how do we do that? Well, we've got to find our wheelbase, and that is the distance between the centre of the front wheel, centre of the rear wheel. You can measure that yourself, but it's available for every single car out there, so you could just look it up, and again, make sure you're looking up for your specific vehicle. So car specs or measure it. Then we've got to find the axle weight. So how much weight is on the front axle, the rear axle, and overall? Well, I can just go back to my weighbridge, because happily enough, the car actually has the front axle and the rear axle weight, so I know how much it is on the front and the rear axles. Great, so let's put it in. 360 on the front, 580 on the rear, 940 total. Now we've got to find a distribution. So we just take the total weight divided by the front, that gives us the front percentage. So 940 divided by 360 is 0.38. So that means 38% front, 62% rear. So 38% there, 62% here. That's how you do that calculation. Nice and easy. So now we've got to figure out the location of the centre of gravity. Well, we just go to wheelbase times percentage on the front axle. So in this case, that's a 2300 millimetre wheelbase times 62% is 1426. And so it's 1422.6 millimetres back from the front axle. So that's what it looks like. Here's our wheelbase. It's 2300 on the Elise. We take 62% of that, or 1.426 millimetres, and that's the centre of gravity at that point right there. So now what we do is we can find a load point on the trailer, and we take an example out of semi-trailers for this, and prime movers. So here's the axle group, and you can see that's the midpoint, but the turntable, the point of load, is actually set just a little bit ahead typically of that. Now you can actually vary how far ahead it is or not. That does change, and the reason for that is that to allow the weight to be primarily taken by these wheels, but a little bit on the steer axle as well, so you get a bit of stability, and that's the way prime movers are set up. We're going to follow the same principle because it kind of works. So If we've got our car trailer over here, then here's our axle midpoint. Here's where we want the car's centre of gravity to be, just a little bit ahead of that. And how much ahead? Well, to get a tow ball mass within limits, which is somewhere between sort of 5 and 12%, depending on how heavy it is. So that's where typically where you want that to be. So what does that look like with a few examples? So here's a mid-engine car forward facing. There's our target. If we have the same car, well, it's got to be pointing backwards, then you can see that we've got to move it further back on the trailer to keep the centre of gravity in the same location. Here's our front rear car, and that's what that would look like, about midpoint again. And with the front engine car, we actually move it quite a long way forwards, but and we're going to turn it around and it's going to look like that. So you can see that depending on where the mass of the car is, you actually position it differently on the trailer, and that's done for stability. Now, what if you added a bit of load to the trailer? Let's go back to the front engine car again, front engine, front drive car. If we added a bit of load here, well, we're actually increasing the tow ball mass and stability. So what we're going to do is move that car a little bit back just to try and keep that tow ball mass within limits. And similarly, if we're going to add a weight at the back, then you would move it a little bit further forwards. That said, what you want to do is try and add weight right over the axles if you can. And the best place for that is actually inside the car itself, as close to that sort of load point as you possibly can. And then finally, you've got to ensure that all your weights are within limits, and here are the weights that have to be in limits. Now, I'm not going to go over this now because this video is long enough already. So what I'm going to refer you to is my calculator. That's where it is. Go there, you can plug in all the numbers and that will give you the weights or not, and it will also explain what all of these points are. So you've got a choice. You can either do that, or you can have Highway Patrol explain to you on the side of a road and then issue you an invoice for their time. The choice is yours. I'd much rather you go to my website and watch my channel videos on this, because you know that would just be a good thing to do, and I think Highway Patrol got better things to do. So 10-point summary to complete then. Ensure all weights are within limits so you're legal and insured. You can use my towing calculator for that. Check the centre of gravity of your car and place it just ahead of that axle midpoint on the trailer, so you get a little bit of tow ball mass for stability, but the weight is taken by the wheels. Consider the additional loads on the trailer if you're carrying an engine, extra wheels, tyres, etc., and balance the car accordingly, but try and get your masses centralised over the trailer axles. Safest to put weight into the tow car, preferably between the front and rear axles of the tow car, as opposed to on the trailer itself, and centralise that weight. A heavy tow car relative to the trailer is exactly what you want for stability. So let's secure the vehicle by the wheels with rated lashing straps, and that's important because if you secure it by the body or the chassis, then the suspension bounces around and that can work the straps loose. If you're towing reversed, check mirrors and engine latch covers, which may not be designed to go backwards at high speed. Check your trailer tire pressures. If the trailer's maybe 1,000 kilograms, you're putting 2,000 on it, that's 3,000 total. That's a lot of extra weight. You need to increase the tire pressures accordingly, otherwise you risk a blowout. Know your regulations and speed limits. It does change with towing. If you do get trailer sway, apply the trailer brakes only if they're independent. If you don't have independent trailer brakes, slow down best as you can and don't go to that speed again, and know your sway risk factors. I've got another video on that. And slow down generally if you get any hint of sway, and then shift the load just a little bit further to the front. Remember, even if you move it maybe 100 mil to the front, that could be 25-30 kilograms of tow ball mass. Hope you found this video useful. Any questions, please use the comment sections, and thanks for watching.